Jessica had been searching for an apartment for 3 months. When she finally found the perfect place, it was a cozy two-bedroom in the heart of the city, with big windows that let in plenty of sunlight and hardwood floors that made the whole place feel warm and welcoming. The rent was reasonable, but only if she could find someone to split it with. She posted ads everywhere, hoping to find the right roommate quickly. That's when Lily called. Her voice was sweet and friendly over the phone, and she seemed genuinely excited about the apartment. When they met in person, Jessica knew she had found her perfect roommate. Lily was in her late 20s, worked as a yoga instructor, and had the most calming presence Jessica had ever encountered. She spoke softly, always smiled, and seemed like the type of person who would keep the apartment clean and peaceful. During their coffee meeting, Lily mentioned that she had grown up in a commune in California where families shared everything. She talked about how wonderful it was to live so closely with others, always having someone around to talk to or share meals with. Jessica found it interesting and a bit exotic. She had grown up in a traditional family home where everyone had their own space and privacy was respected. The move-in day went smoothly. Lily arrived with just a few boxes and some beautiful plants that she carefully arranged around the living room. She had this way of making everything look more peaceful and zen-like. Jessica was impressed by how organized and considerate Lily was, helping arrange furniture and even cooking a delicious dinner for both of them on their first night. As roommates, for the first week, everything seemed perfect. Lily was quiet in the mornings when Jessica was getting ready for work. She kept the common areas spotless and even bought fresh flowers for the kitchen table. She had a habit of lighting candles in the evening and playing soft music, which created such a relaxing atmosphere after long days at the office. But Jessica started noticing some unusual things. Lily would often comment on how big and empty the apartment felt, especially at night. She would mention how strange it was that people in the city lived so separately from each other, sleeping alone in big beds when they could be sharing warmth and companionship. At first, Jessica thought these were just casual observations from someone with a different background. One evening, while they were watching a movie together, Lily casually mentioned that she had trouble sleeping alone. She said it felt unnatural and that humans were meant to sleep close to others for comfort and safety. Jessica nodded politely, thinking it was just another one of Lily's philosophical thoughts about modern living. Lily also had an impressive collection of blankets, beautiful, soft throws and comforters in every color imaginable. She explained that in her previous living situations, blankets were shared among everyone because warmth should be communal. Jessica admired the blankets, but didn't think much about the comment at the time. As the days went by, Jessica noticed that Lily would often wander around the apartment late at night. She could hear soft footsteps in the hallway around midnight, and sometimes she would see light coming from under Lily's door at all hours. When Jessica asked about it, Lily explained that she was a light sleeper and often got up to meditate or do gentle stretches. The apartment had thin walls, and Jessica could sometimes hear Lily talking to herself or humming quietly in her room. It wasn't disturbing, just different from what Jessica was used to. She had always valued her quiet evenings and peaceful nights, but she was learning to appreciate having someone around who brought such positive energy to the space. Lily began suggesting activities they could do together in the evenings. She proposed meditation sessions, cooking elaborate meals, or just sitting and talking about life. Jessica enjoyed these moments, but she also treasured her alone time after busy days at work. She tried to balance being a good roommate with maintaining her personal space and routines. One night, Jessica woke up to strange sounds coming from the living room. It sounded like Lily was rearranging furniture or doing some kind of activity. When Jessica checked the time, it was almost 2 in the morning. She lay in bed listening, wondering if she should check on her roommate or just ignore it and go back to sleep. The next morning, Lily seemed perfectly normal, cheerful, and energetic as always. When Jessica mentioned hearing sounds during the night, Lily explained that she sometimes liked to create different arrangements in the living room for her evening meditation practice. She said it helped her connect with the space and feel more grounded. Jessica was beginning to realize that living with Lily was going to be an interesting experience. Her new roommate had such a different approach to life and living spaces. While Jessica appreciated the positive energy and thoughtfulness Lily brought to their home, she was also starting to sense that they might have very different ideas about personal boundaries and private space. 3 weeks into their living arrangement, Jessica experienced something that would change everything. She had gone to bed early after a particularly exhausting day at work, looking forward to a good night's sleep in her comfortable bedroom. Around 2 in the morning, she woke up to find someone sitting on the edge of her bed. In her sleepy confusion, Jessica's heart started racing until she realized it was Lily. Her roommate was sitting quietly, wearing a flowing nightgown, with her hands folded in her lap. The moonlight coming through the window made the whole scene feel dreamlike and surreal. "Lily?" Jessica whispered, trying to understand what was happening. "Is everything okay? Are you hurt?" Lily turned toward her with a gentle smile. "Oh, I'm so sorry I woke you up. I couldn't sleep, and I was feeling so alone in my room. I just needed to be near someone else for a little while. In my family, we never slept completely alone. There was always someone nearby, and it made us feel safe and connected." Jessica sat up in bed, still processing the situation. She had never had anyone enter her bedroom without permission, and it felt incredibly strange and uncomfortable. But Lily seemed so sincere and vulnerable that Jessica didn't want to be harsh or unkind. "I understand that you're having trouble sleeping," Jessica said carefully, "but this is my private bedroom. I need you to ask before coming in here, especially in the middle of the night." Lily's face showed genuine confusion. "But we're sharing this living space together, aren't we? Like family now?" In the commune where I grew up, bedrooms were just suggestions. People slept wherever they felt most comfortable and safe. I thought maybe we could share energy and help each other sleep better. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Lily explaining her perspective on communal living and sharing spaces. She talked about how lonely and disconnected modern life had become, with people isolating themselves in separate rooms instead of supporting each other. She genuinely believed that sleeping near others was healthier and more natural. Jessica tried to explain her need for privacy and personal space without hurting Lily's feelings. She talked about how she had always had her own room and how important it was for her to have a place where she could retreat and feel completely comfortable. The conversation was awkward but seemed to end with understanding on both sides. The next morning, Lily apologized again and promised to respect Jessica's boundaries. She seemed to understand that not everyone shared her views on communal living, and she agreed to stay in her own room at night. Jessica felt relieved and thought they had worked through their first real roommate disagreement successfully, but over the following days, Jessica noticed that Lily had a very creative interpretation of what they had agreed upon. While she didn't enter Jessica's bedroom again in the middle of the night, she began finding other ways to be closer during sleeping hours. First, Lily started leaving her bedroom door wide open at night, with soft music playing and candles lit. She explained that this made her feel less isolated while still respecting Jessica's space. Then she began setting up a meditation area right outside Jessica's bedroom door, complete with cushions and blankets, where she would sit quietly for hours. Lily also started talking about the apartment's energy flow and how closing bedroom doors disrupted the natural circulation of positive vibes throughout the space. She suggested they could leave all doors open at night to create better harmony in their living environment. Jessica found herself in an increasingly uncomfortable situation. She wanted to be understanding and respectful of Lily's background and beliefs, but she also needed to maintain her own comfort and boundaries in what was supposed to be her home too. The situation became more complicated when Lily began asking to borrow pillows and blankets from Jessica's room. She explained that her own bedding wasn't as comfortable, and since they were sharing the apartment, shouldn't they also share the coziest sleeping arrangements? Each request seemed reasonable on its own, but Jessica was beginning to feel like her personal space was slowly being invaded. One evening, Jessica came home to find that Lily had rearranged the furniture in the living room to create what she called a communal relaxation space. There were mattresses and blankets arranged in a circle, with soft lighting and calming music. Lily was so excited to show Jessica her creation, explaining how this setup would help them both feel more connected and less isolated in their big apartment. Jessica stood in the doorway, looking at her transformed living room, and realized that this situation was becoming much more complex than she had anticipated. What had started as a simple roommate arrangement was turning into something entirely different, and she wasn't sure how to handle it without damaging their relationship or making Lily feel rejected and unwelcome. The blanket situation started innocently enough, but it quickly became the center of an ongoing household drama that Jessica never could have anticipated. It began when she came home from work one Tuesday to find her favorite comforter missing from her bed. This wasn't just any blanket. It was an expensive down comforter that Jessica had saved up for months to buy, and it was perfectly broken and incredibly comfortable. Jessica searched her room thoroughly before venturing out to ask Lily about it. She found her roommate in the living room, wrapped up in the missing comforter while reading a book about mindful living. Oh, this Lily looked up with a bright smile when Jessica asked about the blanket. "I hope you don't mind, but I borrowed it because my room gets so cold at night. I figured since we're sharing this space, we should share the warmest, most comfortable things too. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it?" Jessica tried to explain that the comforter was expensive and that she preferred to keep her personal bedding in her own room. Lily listened thoughtfully and seemed to understand, but her response caught Jessica completely off guard. "You know what would solve this problem?" Lily said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "We should create a sharing system for all the blankets and pillows in the apartment. That way, we can both use whatever is most comfortable each night, depending on our needs." Before Jessica could respond, Lily had pulled out a notebook and started sketching what looked like a blanket rotation schedule. She had divided the week into sections and was assigning different bedding items to different days. According to her plan, Jessica would have access to her own comforter on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, while Lily would use it on the other days. This is crazy, Jessica thought to herself, but she didn't want to be confrontational. Instead, she gently suggested that they each stick to using their own bedding in their own rooms. Lily nodded and agreed, but Jessica could see the disappointment in her eyes. The next morning, Jessica woke up to find a second mattress on her bedroom floor. Not a full mattress, but a thick camping pad with pillows and blankets arranged neatly beside her bed. When she found Lily in the kitchen making breakfast, her roommate explained the setup with enthusiasm. "I thought about what you said about keeping bedding separate," Lily said, flipping pancakes with a huge smile. "So I created an emergency sleeping space in your room for nights when I really can't sleep alone. This way, I'm not using your bed or your blankets, but I can still be near someone. Isn't that a perfect compromise?" Jessica stared at Lily, trying to process what she was hearing. The idea that someone would set up a bed in her room without asking seemed completely unreasonable, but Lily presented it as though she had solved a complex mathematical equation. "Lily, you can't just put a bed in my room," Jessica said, trying to keep her voice calm. "This is my private space. I need you to ask before making changes like this." But Lily had an answer for everything. She explained that the sleeping pad was temporary and could be moved easily. She pointed out that Jessica's room was larger and had better energy flow. She even mentioned that in many cultures, extended families all slept in the same room, and it was considered the most natural and healthy way to live. The situation escalated when Jessica discovered that Lily had somehow gotten a copy of her bedroom key made. She found this out when she came home from a weekend trip to visit her parents, only to discover that her room had been completely reorganized. Lily had moved furniture around to create what she called optimal sleeping zones. She had redistributed all the blankets and pillows from both bedrooms to create several different sleeping areas throughout Jessica's room. There were meditation cushions arranged in corners, plants placed strategically for better air quality, and soft lighting installed to create a more calming atmosphere. Surprise! Lily called out when she heard Jessica's shocked gasp. I spent the whole weekend creating the perfect shared sleeping sanctuary. Now we can both be comfortable. And you'll see how much better you sleep when you're not isolated in here all alone. Jessica stood in her doorway, looking at her transformed bedroom, and felt a mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief. Her private space had been completely altered without her permission, and Lily seemed to think she had done something wonderful and thoughtful. The conversation that followed was the most direct one they had ever had. Jessica explained that having her room changed without permission felt like a violation of her privacy and trust. Lily responded by saying that privacy was just a modern concept that made people lonely and disconnected from each other. But this is my home too, Lily said, tears forming in her eyes. I thought we were building something beautiful together. I thought you would appreciate having a space where we could both feel comfortable and supported. Jessica realized that they were operating from completely different frameworks about what it meant to share a living space. For her, sharing an apartment meant splitting costs and responsibilities while maintaining individual privacy. For Lily, it meant creating a communal environment where everything was shared and no one ever had to feel alone. The blanket wars had evolved into something much bigger than bedding arrangements. They were dealing with fundamental differences in how they viewed personal boundaries, shared spaces, and what it meant to live with another person. Jessica knew that something had to change, but she wasn't sure how to resolve such deep philosophical differences about the nature of home and privacy. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening when Jessica returned from a business trip that had kept her away for 4 days. She was exhausted from traveling and looking forward to sleeping in her own bed, in her own room, in peace and quiet. But as she climbed the stairs to their apartment, she could hear music and voices coming from inside. Jessica unlocked the front door to find 3 people she had never seen before sitting in her living room, drinking tea and talking about crystal healing. The strangers looked up and waved at her as if they belonged there, which made the whole situation even more surreal. Jessica. Lily appeared from the kitchen carrying a tray of homemade cookies. Perfect timing. I want you to meet my friends from the wellness center. We're having a sleep circle ceremony tonight, and now you can join us. Jessica stood there with her suitcase, trying to understand what was happening in her own apartment. The strangers were friendly enough, introducing themselves and complimenting the beautiful energy of the space. But Jessica had no idea why they were there or what a sleep circle ceremony involved. We're going to spend the night in your bedroom, one of Lily's friends explained excitedly. Lily has created such an amazing shared sleeping sanctuary in there. We're going to practice communal dreaming and energy sharing. It's going to be incredible. Jessica felt her stomach drop. She excused herself and walked toward her bedroom, hoping that maybe she had misunderstood what was happening. But when she opened her bedroom door, she found a scene that was even more shocking than she had imagined. Her bedroom had been completely transformed into what looked like a meditation retreat center. There were mattresses and sleeping bags arranged in a large circle on the floor. Candles were burning everywhere, creating flickering shadows on the walls. Soft music was playing from speakers that hadn't been there when she left. The air was thick with incense, and there were crystals and plants arranged throughout the space. Her own bed had been pushed against the wall and covered with what appeared to be an altar of some kind, with more candles, flowers, and objects that Jessica didn't recognize. Her personal belongings had been moved or put away somewhere, and everything that made the room hers had been replaced with items that belonged to Lily's spiritual practice. Jessica walked back to the living room where Lily and her friends were, discussing their plans for the evening. They talked about sharing dreams, connecting their energy fields, and supporting each other through the vulnerable state of sleep. It all sounded very meaningful to them, but Jessica felt like she was in someone else's apartment. Lily, can I talk to you privately? Jessica asked, trying to keep her voice steady. They went to the kitchen, where Jessica tried to explain how violated and uncomfortable she felt. She talked about coming home after a long trip and finding strangers in her bedroom, sleeping in her private space without her permission. She explained that she had never agreed to have people. She didn't know staying overnight in their apartment. But Lily's response made it clear that they were operating from completely different understandings of what had been agreed upon between them. Lily believed that by sharing an apartment, they had created a communal living space where friends and community members were always welcome. She thought Jessica would be excited to participate in meaningful spiritual practices and form deeper connections with like-minded people. "I don't understand why you're so upset," Lily said, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. "I've been working so hard to create a beautiful, nurturing environment for both of us. I thought you would appreciate having a community of supportive people around. Don't you get lonely sleeping all by yourself every night?" Jessica tried to explain that she valued her solitude and that having personal space didn't mean she was lonely or antisocial. She talked about how she needed time to recharge after social interactions, and how her bedroom was supposed to be her sanctuary where she could be completely relaxed. In private, the conversation went in circles, with both women becoming more frustrated and upset. Lily's friends could hear the discussion from the living room, and they eventually joined the conversation to offer their perspectives on communal living and the importance of breaking down artificial barriers between people. Jessica found herself in the bizarre situation of having to defend her right to privacy in her own apartment to a group of strangers who were planning to sleep in her bedroom. The whole situation felt like something from a weird dream, but the emotions and stress were very real. As the evening wore on, it became clear that this wasn't just a misunderstanding that could be resolved with better communication. Lily genuinely believed that Jessica's desire for privacy was unhealthy, and that she was trying to help Jessica become more open and connected to others. Jessica realized that no amount of explanation was going to bridge the gap between their completely different philosophies about personal boundaries and shared living spaces. The sleep circle ceremony went ahead without Jessica, who spent the night on the living room couch listening to the sounds of strangers sleeping in her bedroom. It was one of the most uncomfortable and unsettling nights of her life, and she knew that something fundamental had to change in their living arrangement. By morning, Jessica had made a decision that would change everything for both of them. The next morning brought an awkward silence to the apartment. Lily's friends packed up their sleeping bags and meditation supplies, thanking Jessica for her hospitality before leaving. Jessica sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, trying to figure out how to address what had happened without completely destroying her relationship with Lily. When they were finally alone, both women seemed to understand that they needed to have a serious conversation about their living situation. Jessica had spent the night thinking about everything that had led to this moment, from the first midnight bedroom visit to the transformation of her private space into a communal sleep center. "Lily," Jessica began carefully, "I think we need to admit that we have very different ideas about what it means to share a living space." Lily nodded, her eyes still red from crying the night before. "I know you're upset with me, but I honestly thought I was doing something good for both of us. I hate the idea of you being alone and isolated in your room every night, when we could be supporting each other and building a real community here." Jessica appreciated Lily's sincerity, but she also knew that their fundamental differences weren't something that could be compromised away. She had tried to be understanding and flexible, but she couldn't continue living in a situation where her basic need for privacy and personal space wasn't respected. "I think you're a wonderful person," Jessica said, "but I don't think we're compatible as roommates. We both deserve to live in environments where we feel comfortable and respected, and I don't think this apartment can be that for both of us." The conversation that followed was emotional but surprisingly productive. Both women were able to express their feelings honestly without attacking each other personally. Lily admitted that she had been asked to leave previous living situations for similar reasons, and she was starting to realize that her approach to communal living wasn't compatible with most people's expectations about shared apartments. "Maybe I need to find people who actually want the kind of community I'm trying to create," Lily said thoughtfully, instead of trying to convince people to change their minds about privacy and personal space. Jessica felt relieved that Lily was beginning to understand the situation from her perspective. She also felt genuinely sad about the idea of Lily leaving, because despite their differences, she had grown fond of her roommate's positive energy and kind heart. Over the next 2 weeks, Lily began looking for a new living situation. She found a wellness community outside the city where several families lived together in a large house, sharing meals, childcare, and sleeping spaces according to their needs and comfort levels. When Lily described the place, her whole face lit up with excitement in a way that Jessica had never seen before. They actually want the kind of lifestyle I've been trying to create. Lily explained, nobody thinks it's weird that I don't like sleeping alone, and they have community bedrooms where people can choose to sleep together or separately, depending on how they're feeling each night. Jessica helped Lily pack her belongings, and they spent their last evening together talking about what they had learned from their experience as roommates. Lily apologized again for overstepping boundaries and not understanding Jessica's need for privacy. Jessica apologized for not being more direct about her discomfort earlier in their living arrangement. I wish I had been clearer about my expectations from the beginning, Jessica said. Maybe we could have avoided some of the confusion and hurt feelings. The day Lily moved out was bittersweet for both of them. They had genuinely cared about each other, even though their living styles were completely incompatible. Jessica helped load Lily's car with her impressive collection of blankets and meditation supplies, and they promised to stay in touch. 6 months later, they met for coffee to catch up on their lives. Lily was glowing with happiness as she described her new living situation. She was thriving in the communal environment, participating in group meals, shared childcare, and yes, community sleeping arrangements that rotated based on people's needs and preferences. I finally found my tribe, Lily said with a huge smile. People who understand that connection and community don't have to mean giving up individuality, but they also don't require complete isolation. Jessica had found a new roommate who shared her values about personal space and privacy. She was also dating someone new, and she laughed as she told Lily about how much she appreciated having her own bedroom to retreat to when she needed alone time. I learned so much about myself from living with you, Jessica told Lily. I realized how important my boundaries are to me, and I got much better at communicating what I need, instead of just hoping people will figure it out. Both women agreed that their experience, while difficult at times, had taught them valuable lessons about compatibility, communication, and the importance of finding living situations that match their core values and needs. As they said goodbye that day, Jessica reflected on how sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to recognize when you're not right for each other, rather than trying to force a situation that makes everyone uncomfortable. Lily had found her community of people who shared her vision of connected, communal living, and Jessica had learned to advocate for her own needs more clearly and confidently. The Great Blanket Wars had ended not with a winner or loser, but with both women finding living situations where they could be authentically themselves, without having to compromise their core values about personal space, community, and what it means to feel at home.